Hello guys, how are we? So this is the 22nd of July and I thought I would record a video for my channel to talk about HRT and why I went on HRT and what I have experienced since being on HRT, because I'm coming up to about 5 weeks now of being on it. So obviously everyone's initial thoughts and feelings as to why they want to start HRT in the first place are different. But like I've said before on other videos, you cannot detect perimenopause through a blood test. But what a blood test can do is obviously rule out anything else that could be making you feel the way you do before potentially going down the route of HRT. Now, I noticed a few symptoms a few years ago. At first I was just kind of like, yeah, this is probably the start of perimenopause, but there was nothing enough. There wasn't enough for me to kind of go, do you know what? I think I'm going to go on HRT. So what I tried to do initially was go down like all the natural routes of kind of making sure I was taking all the right vitamins I needed to take. I was using this stuff. I'll show you a picture of it actually. So I was using this. And I can never say this word, but it included that. And I have heard that that is good for anxiety and stuff like that. And relieving some of the symptoms that I was feeling during the course of the month. But at first it probably did work. But then I noticed probably at the start of the year that it just wasn't really doing anything for me anymore. So my symptoms initially were tinnitus. I started to notice changes with my cycle. So I've always been bang on every 28 days. But I was noticing that it was happening kind of like at 23, 24 days, or sometimes I would be a bit later and it would be like 33 days, 34 days, and it was different every single month. There was no real pattern as such. The only pattern I did notice is that if I came on my period before the 28-day mark, my period would last a lot longer. So I'm talking 5-6 days. If my period was late, so like in the 30 days, then I would only be on for about 3 days. So that was the only real pattern I was starting to notice, and the pain as well. Like, so I started to feel cramps at ovulation and not just at the time when obviously my period was due. The cramping started to occur, like I said, at ovulation for a couple of days and it would wear off. And then the week before my period, I would cramp pretty much every single day leading up to the bleed. And then it would be pretty bad for the first 2 days of the bleed. And initially, I only really ever felt pain on day one. And that was it. But it was kind of 1 day into the bleed, 2 days into the bleed. And then at some point, it was like every single day I was on, I was having cramping. So cycle changes. That is one that you can track through an app to kind of keep an eye on how things are going. Obviously, I've talked about cramping at ovulation. Now, last year, I think it was last year, the start of last year, I experienced 2 hot flushes, whatever you want to call it. They are very intense. They come on all of a sudden. You get very, very hot internally, very, very sweaty. It lasts for a few minutes and then it goes away. So that I've literally had 2 of them. But I noticed that when I was using this stuff, that went away. And obviously now I'm on HRT. I've not experienced one. So again, that was something that I did experience at the start. The tiredness and the brain fog. So when I was on prep for bodybuilding shows, the fatigue was really real in prep, especially in the last few weeks of prep where you're getting quite lean, your food's low, you're still trying to train as hard as you can. And I was napping. And then when I was kind of like, if you call it an off season, I didn't need the naps. But I've been finding that over the last, let's say just under a year, I was finding that I got to about 1-2 o'clock, I was crashing out. I needed a nap. If it was 20 minutes, great. If it was 45 minutes, great. And I was getting to a point where I was having to nap every single day, especially when I was working of an evening doing PT. If I did not have that respite and that nap during the course of the day, it would make my evening really uncomfortable. The brain fog was getting quite bad. Now, I'm quite an alert on it person, but there was things that I was doing, like forgetting names. I remember once I was doing dinner and I went to put the oven tray in the dishwasher. Just weird stuff like that. I've obviously talked about changes with my cycles, and one thing I did notice, as well as the cramping the week before my period, was the headaches. I was getting headaches pretty much every day for the 7 days leading up to the period, and then once the period was here, the headaches would go away. Anxiety. Now, with anxiety, I've suffered with anxiety badly since the end of 2018, so I'm not too sure whether that anxiety has potentially stems from very early perimenopause. So that 2018, I would have been 33. So you're talking 7-8 years ago. Or I don't know whether or not the anxiety then was triggered by something else, but then maybe perimenopause was making the anxiety last longer. I've got no idea, so I don't really know too much what to say about that. I also noticed last year when I was having the hot flushes that I got a couple of aura migraines. So aura migraines was literally where it happened at the gym as well on both occasions. So I had like a fuzzy line that started in the centre of my eye. So basically I'd look at my phone and out of one eye I could not see and focus on like anything that was written down. It was all fuzzy. And then during the course of about 20 minutes, the line started to slowly move out to the side of my eye. And then it went. Now, sometimes when people get aura migraines, they get pain as well. But I didn't get pain with mine. Mine was literally visual. So like I couldn't see anything in one eye. And then it lasted for 20 minutes. And I had them, I think, 2 times. I think it was 2 times, maybe 3. But again, since taking that stuff, I was not getting any more of these aura migraines. So I've got a lot to say about this product. And by the way, I'm not getting paid to advertise this. This is just something that I use. So yeah, and the only other thing was vertigo. So I've noticed over the last couple of years that when I go to bed, if I get out of bed quite quickly and turn my head, I will have vertigo all day. So that is quite a long list of symptoms. But the main one that was really starting to get to me, that made me want to go on HRT, was the tiredness. Everything else I can cope with, the pain, the headaches, even the vertigo, the tinnitus and stuff like that, I can cope with that, but I cannot cope with actually having to nap during the course of every day. And sometimes that nap wouldn't even help. So I was just thinking to myself, like, what is this? I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. So I kept a list of all my symptoms, went to the doctor. I have talked about this on here before. Obviously, she said, look, based on your symptoms, I'm pretty certain you're in perimenopause. Let's do a full blood count anyway. My blood test was fine, just to rule out anything else. She also said that the tinnitus and the vertigo was really weird and rare symptoms of perimenopause. So she said, look, I want to check them out a little bit more, book a separate appointment and we will talk through them. So I had an appointment to go through the tinnitus. She checked my ears. And basically she was like, yeah, I'm pretty certain that you've got BPPV, which is benign something vertigo. So basically it's when you first when you move, you get up, you spin, something to do with the crystals in your ear, and then you'll have vertigo. So the stuff that she told me to do to relieve the vertigo is stuff that I already knew anyway. But since I've trained myself to get out of bed a certain way, touch wood, I no longer get this vertigo spells. But every now and again, I might feel a bit dizzy, but it doesn't last long. And then she basically turned around and she was like, yeah, I believe the BPPV has been triggered by perimenopause. She then went on to talk about she also said for the vertigo, she wanted to do an ECG as well. So she was like, let's get an ECG done just to make sure there's nothing sinister going on, and to make you kind of lose, to maybe get dizzy and stuff like that. I had an ECG done. The ECG was normal. So yeah, so the dizziness and the vertigo and the tinnitus and stuff are, we think, symptoms of perimenopause. So that was that. I had all that done. She then said to me, what HRT do you want to do? And I said, I don't really want the coil and I don't really want to take a tablet. So she was like, right, so you've got a gel or you've got patches. So I said, let's go with the patches. And obviously there is different types of patches and dosages and stuff with HRT, but she just tried me on one first. And she was like, look, this is going to be trial and error. It might not work. We might need to review it in a few months' time. You might need to change either the way you're doing it or the dosage. A bit like the contraceptive pill. It's not always going to work for everyone first time. You might need to adapt. So I got prescribed these. So these are Everil Sequoia patches. And basically the way these work is that you get 8 in a pack. You get 4 of these. These are the estrogen. You change them twice a week. You stick them on your body from the waist down, and every time you stick them on, you alternate sides. So one time I might do it on my left side, the next time I might do it on my right, and you're supposed to ideally stick it in different parts of your lower body. So I normally go around the top part of my glute down towards my hip. They're the areas that I find work for me. So I always do a Tuesday and a Saturday. So I changed this yesterday and I'm next due to change it on Saturday. You take 4 of these first. These are estrogen. And then once they're done, you go on to these, which is progesterone. Exactly the same rules apply. Change it twice a week, lower body, and you get 4 in the pack. So you've basically got 2 weeks worth of this one. Then you've got 2 weeks worth of that one. And that's your month. Then you go on to the next pack. You start again. You start with that one. 4 times, and then you do that one. You can't mix and match. You shouldn't be getting confused with it because it's different hormones and it's different things. So obviously I started with this one first, and the main symptoms I noticed at first was when I first stuck the patch on, I got a bit nauseous. And then I have noticed that every time I do change my patch, I might feel a little bit queasy, but it doesn't last long. That's fine, I can deal with that. So that's estrogen. I did find with this one that I found that my mind and my body were trying to do 2 things. So it almost felt like my body was trying to change, but because my mind has been so used to acting a certain way, my mind was trying to talk over my body and go, no, you shouldn't be feeling that way, you should be feeling that way. And it was almost as if I was having an argument in my head about how I should be feeling. However, I finished the estrogen and I went on to these ones, which is the progesterone. Now, with this one, I started to notice some slightly different symptoms as well. Still had a bit of nausea when I stuck it on. And I got really sore nipples. Apparently, it's a common thing. I've also been feeling really bloated in my lower stomach on these compared to when I was on these. Now, the way it should work is that when you finish your 4 of these, the progesterone, your period will then come. And that's what happened for me. So my period is now here. I'm on day 3 of my period. But because the progesterone are now finished, I'm now back on the estrogen. So I don't feel as bad on these now compared to when I first took these. As in my mind and my body trying to have a bit of a fight with each other. My period, however, this is the first period I've had whilst I've been on HRT. So the only thing I noticed was I was not having I didn't have any cramping during ovulation this time. I did not have any cramping the week leading up to the bleed, and I did not have the headaches leading up to the bleed. I have got a bit of a headache now, and I did have the other day as well. But that's different to what it used to be. It used to be every single day leading up to the period, but now I didn't have that. I have noticed that I've been getting a few more spots on my face. Now, when I've Googled that could have something to do with the HRT and something to do with the oil production in your face due to the hormones that you're using. I'm not too fussed. They will go away at their own time. Now that I'm back on these ones, the estrogen, I've noticed that I'm not as bloated in my lower belly. Now, the bloating could be because of the progesterone HRT, or it could just be that was the second half of my cycle where my period was due. I'm not too sure. The only other thing I will say, and sorry if it's disgusting, but I'm keeping this as real as possible, is that I've had a little bit of, I had loose bowels yesterday. So at first, my initial thoughts was, oh my God, I've got a bug, but I wasn't ill, and it was one time. And again, I Googled it, and apparently being on HRT whilst on your period can do something to your bowels. So I'm putting it down to that, to be quite honest with you. The only other thing I did forget to say when I very first started my HRT, and I have talked about this on a separate video, and I started these estrogen patches, I was really poorly. So at first I thought it was hay fever, but then I had a cough, sore throat, like it was a really mucousy cough, quite dry. My sinuses were really blocked. And apparently when you start HRT, a common side effect is that you do feel poorly. You come out with cold symptoms. So here we are. So I'm back on the estrogen patches. I have got 2 more left in the pack. And then I'm back on the progesterone. As a whole, right now, I would say that the positives outweigh the negatives. I can deal with nausea. I can deal with sore nipples. I can deal with the odd spot on my face. And I can deal with loose bowels if that needs to happen occasionally. As a whole, though, I have noticed a difference in my tiredness levels. But it's going to take 3 months for this to fully kick in and make me feel a certain way. But I have noticed differences, good and bad. So there's my video about HRT, why I started on HRT and what I have been experiencing since being on HRT. Some of these side effects might drop off over the next couple of months. Some new ones might appear. But they're the ones that I have as it stands. So, yeah, we will see how I go on the rest of this second box. And then I have got 1 more box in the prescription, and then I need to go and order some more. So I'm guessing that when I get to the end of the 3rd pack, my doctor might want to see me, maybe see how I am, see whether or not it's working. Yeah. Sorry it's such a long video, but rather than doing dribs and drabs on my Instagram and going, this is how I feel now and this is how I feel now, I thought, do you know what, fuck it, let's do a video, a full-on video, and tell you guys about everything. So I am hopeful that this is working for me. But yeah, it's all new to me. So let's see how things go. But if anyone has got any questions or anything they want to ask me, please do not hesitate to message me. I'm very, very open. I'm very happy to talk about things. So yeah, I'll speak to you guys soon.